Good evening. I think we're on and ready to go, and I won't touch it anymore, so it'll keep working. I'm going to sing a couple of good old songs here. Number 452, 452, and 453 after that. Standing on the promises. Standing on the promises of Christ, my King. Through eternal ages let his praises ring. Glory in the highest I will shout and sing. Standing on the promises of God. Standing, standing, standing on the promises of God, my Savior. Standing, standing, I'm standing on the promises of God, standing on the promises that cannot fail. When the howling storms without a fear assail, by the living word of God I shall prevail. Standing on the promises of God, standing, standing, standing on the promises
Please bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, you are the Creator. You are the one that is there when the storms are blowing and when the wind is silent. You are the one that created all this, and you are the one that created us. You know every hair on our head, and you know everything about us. You don't try to control us, but you want us to follow your Son. And Lord, I ask that you please be with us and continue to be in our hearts and help our minds as we keep growing. Every day we grow to be more like Jesus, to be more lights unto the world, to be examples as he was to us. Please be with Steve as he's talked to us tonight, that his words will inspire us and keep that flame alive that's in our hearts. In Christ's name, amen.
All right, let's open up our Bibles. We'll be working in 2 Samuel 9 this evening as we continue our series about David. I don't know, when you're thinking about a lot of news right now about a lot of thoughts today about presidents. So let me just ask, what are some things, without getting into a firestorm here, when you think about a leader of a country, David is a king, what are some things that you would like to expect to have in a leader?
Honesty.
Okay, honesty. What else? Decisiveness, yes. Convictions. The interest of other people, not just himself. That's good. Yeah. Not greedy. Yeah. It's all kinds of things that we might expect from a leader. When you think of David, what's a characteristic that you think of when you think of David that's positive? He had some negative ones. Karen? Huh? Humility. Yes, humility. He could humble himself when he made mistakes. It might take him a little while to get there, but he could get there. He trusted God. Yeah. Compassion. Yeah. Yes. Compassion.
Respect for others.
Yes. Yeah. When the prophet Samuel, he said, he made a comment about David in 1 Samuel 13:14, that the Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and commanded him to rule over the people. This idea in Acts 13, Paul is preaching there, and he highlights Israel's greatest king. And he said in Acts 13:22, and when God had removed Saul, he raised up David to be the king, of whom he testified and said, I have found in David the son of Jesse a man after my own heart. We're going to talk a little bit about, what that means. But what does that mean to you to say that David was a man after God's own heart? Karen? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I had a footnote here. It said sensitive to God's will.
Okay. And that fits well with what, in fact, when Paul in Acts 13:22, he continued. He said, I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart who will do all my will. So that fits well with that kind of definition. But we're going to talk a little bit about today, about David's heart and maybe what it was about that was connected to God. Let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 1. 2 Samuel 9, verse 1. And David said, is there still anyone left of the house of Saul that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake? Now, in the previous chapter, we see that David has experienced this period of prosperity and peace. And Rather than boast about what all he's done and accomplished, he considers all the sacrifices that have been made to get him where he is, including he thinks about the great love that Jonathan showed toward him, the son of Saul. Remember years ago we talked about that where they made a covenant together and they each pledged their loyalty to each other. And in 1 Samuel 20, 14, he asked David, he said, "If I am still alive, show me the steadfast love of the Lord that I may not die, and do not cut off your steadfast love from my house forever, when the Lord cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth." So Jonathan asked him, he said, once God has got rid of all your enemies, would you just remember my family? So David remembers here as he's reflecting on the kindness that he pledged to Jonathan. Verse 2, now chapter 9. David said, "Is there still anyone left of the house of Saul that I may show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" When you hear the word kindness, what do you think of? Someone is kind, what might I be saying about them? Yeah, compassionate. Yeah, respectful people, yeah. Okay, yeah, they're moved by the suffering of other people, situations of other people. This word in Hebrew is chesed. It's a very important word. It speaks about the nature of God. But kindness is, often today not highly valued, perhaps. I don't think many of us would think to say, if we're talking about who we'd want as president, kindness may not be a first thought that comes to mind. But if you've ever known somebody who wasn't kind, that might move higher up the list. Mark Twain once said that kindness is the language that the deaf can hear and the blind can see. When you speak of a kind person, we may be implying they have a positive disposition or they're encouraging, but this term implies a whole lot more in this biblical concept. Let's continue with our story and maybe we'll learn a little more about this kindness. Verse 3. Ziba said to the king, when David said, "Is there anybody in the house of Saul I could show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" And Ziba said, "Well, there's a son, Jonathan. There's still a son of Jonathan. He is crippled in both his feet." So if we'll flip over to back up 2 Samuel chapter 4 for a moment. So when Mephibosheth's father Jonathan died and his grandfather Saul died at the Battle of Gilboa, the house of Saul came into chaos, and the scene's described in 2 Samuel 4 verse 4. Jonathan, the son of Saul, had a son who was crippled in his feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel, that they had died. His nurse took him up and fled, and as she fled in her haste, she fell, and he became lame. He fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. Why was the nurse in such a rush to grab him and run that she fell with him? The expectation is that since the house of Saul is being cleaned out, there's a piece of literature called The Prince, written by Machiavelli. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase Machiavellian. It's usually not a positive thing. But he wrote this book called The Prince, basically how to govern. And one of the rules of how you govern is if you take out a leader, you need to take out his whole family, because there's going to be somebody left there who may come back and get you. So you just need a clean house. So this was the same back then. That's why she's rushing to get him out of the house. You're right, the first king. Mhm. Yeah. It could be. It could be. Now, they had chiefs before this. The judges precedes this. So, or it could, I think that's probably just standard practice of warring groups, that a leader, if you don't take out everybody, somebody's going to come with vengeance to get you. That could be a family, or it could be a tribe, or it could be a nation. But you're right, they're probably also aware of that from other people. That's just the way it works, right? If you kill a family member of mine, then I'm going to be coming after you to get you. And that's the way the world works. So now it's been maybe 15 years later since he was dropped and crippled. And so Ziba's described simply. How does he describe Mephibosheth? The boy with 2 crippled feet. In fact, what's interesting is about every time we hear Mephibosheth described, it's always, he's not just Mephibosheth, he's Mephibosheth with 2 crippled feet. It's attached to his name. What do you think Ziba may have wanted to make sure David knew that he was well, there's Mephibosheth, but he's got 2 crippled feet. Why is that important for David to know? Not a threat, and in fact, right, he's a liability. And do you really want to go down this road? And so David, without hesitation, verse 4, says to him, "Where is he?" And Ziba said to the king, "He's in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, at Lo-debar." The town is called Lo-debar. Now, in Hebrew, Lo means no. You cut it before a word, it means not that. So, and Debar means pasture land. So, Lo-debar means basically no man's land. Now, why would Mephibosheth be in no man's land? Hiding, yeah, yep. They have 15 years, his whole life has just been in hiding. Expectation. At some point, they're going to come for you. They're going to find you. It's going to kill you. And, that would be, how would that shape a person? That just your natural instinct is, to hide. There was a story of about a guy that called. He was looking for somebody. He said, "Hey," he called on the phone. A boy answered. He says, "Hey, is your dad there?" And he said, "No, he's not here." He said, "Well, where is he?" "He's talking to the police officer." "Okay, all right. Is your mom there?" No. "What's she doing?" "She's talking to the fireman." "Okay. What's that sound I hear in the background?" "That's a helicopter." Why is there a helicopter out there?" "It's looking for me." By the way, 99% of the time we have a child missing. Where are they, Terry? A little child. Where are they at? They're in the house, right? There's just the other day, one in Clever. They're all over, looking all over, can't find it. And he was wrapped up in the blankets on the bed, such that he just fell asleep. That, almost every time, a little child. They're in the house and they're hiding there. But anyway, Mephibosheth isn't just hiding as a game. He is afraid of what's going on here. And so, I think that that's a natural reaction when we feel threatened. Some of us fight, some of us withdraw. verse 5, now, chapter 9. Then King David sent and brought him from the house of Machir, the son of Maamiel, in Lodabar. And Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David, and he fell on his face, and he paid homage. And David said, Mephibosheth. And he answered, Behold, I am your servant. What's Mephibosheth thinking right now? That's it. That's all. They found me. And that's all she wrote. David reveals his disposition and what he says next, verse 7. David said to him, Do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land of Saul from your father, and you shall eat at my table always. Now, what's going through Mephibosheth's head? Yeah. Is this like a lion playing with a baby gazelle before it kills it? Is this a setup? I mean, but then verse 8, he paid homage and he said, What is your servant that you should show regard for a dead dog such as I? Of course, a dog, this time a scavenger, they're considered detestable animals. But he didn't just say, I'm a dog, I'm a dead dog. He's very confused. He bowed. Go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And he's, bowing down, which would be difficult for a crippled person to do anyway.
I remember as a child, dreading the fact that I was going to have to face my father for something.
Yeah.
And I can still remember in this time that
Yeah. But you knew probably not going to take a sword and cut your head off. Right. But I mean, yes, we know, we can all sense a sense of fear of punishment, so we can kind of connect with the feeling. But, I expect by now he had thought that I'm so worthless, I'm not worthy of the sword. But now, that's the only reason he could be bringing me here. Yeah.
and he was fine with it. I mean, he was really relaxed, and it surprised us. It kind of reminds me of that story.
Yeah.
It's like, this is it.
And so David, he may be waiting for the sword to come any moment when David says again, now verse 9, Then the king called Ziba, Saul's servant, and he said to him, All that belonged to Saul and to all his house I have given to your master's grandson. And you and your sons and your servants shall till the land for him and bring in the produce, that your master's grandson may have bread to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, he shall always eat at my table. Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Why is that important to add? He's got a lot of people to take care of Mephibosheth. Some interesting parallels when you think about Mephibosheth, and our kind of connecting somewhat, maybe seeing ourselves in him. He sees himself as a dead dog, and I think of like Ephesians chapter 2, some of the comparisons that Paul says that we were dead in our transgressions, estranged from God in this no man's land. And yet, He made us alive, seated us with Him in the heavenly realms, given us incomparable riches by His grace, Paul talks about there. And why did He do that? Because of His great love for us, who is rich in mercy, and it is by grace you have been saved. And then he winds up this: God raised us up with Christ and expressed in His kindness to us in Christ Jesus. So, a man after David's own heart, a part of it is the chesed, the kindness of God that David demonstrates powerfully here. I can't help but think of a story like that. Some of you who are newer here didn't know Corey Tallickson. Corey had spina bifida from birth, and he was always in a wheelchair, distorted body. But Gail and Steve adopted him, and at a very young age, and obviously knew he had very serious health issues. No one believed he would live as long as he did. And at the adoption proceedings, the judge asked if they were sure they wanted to go through with adoption of him. And Gail said, "Of course. Are you crazy? After 8 months, he's already a part of our hearts and our family. It was like he always belonged to us." We told the judge, as far as we were concerned, changing our minds was not an option. Then there was that special smile of his. It had been present all the time. In verse 13, 2 Samuel 9, so Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, and he ate always at the king's table, and he was lame in both his feet. Charles Swindoll wrote this. I'm going to just read what he wrote of an image of the dinner table. The meal is fixed, and the dinner bell rings, and along comes members of the family and their guests of David. There's Amnon, clever, witty. He comes to the table first. Joab, one of the special guests, muscular, masculine, attractive, skin bronze from the sun, walks tall and erect like an experienced soldier. Next comes Absalom. Talk about handsome. From the crowns of his head to the soles of his feet, not a blemish. There's Tamar, beautiful, tender daughter of David. And then, of course, there's Solomon also. He's there. He's been studying all day, and he slips away to come to the table to eat. And then you hear this clump, clump, clump. And here comes Mephibosheth, hobbling along. He smiles and humbly joins the others at the table, along with the king's children. You know, why did David do it? Why did Stephen, Gail do it? Well, David declared in 2 Samuel 7:18, then the king David went in and sat before the Lord and said, who am I, O Lord? And what is my house that you have brought me thus far? Well, that's probably the end of the decision, as it began with David asking, why do you allow me to eat at your table? You know, what have I done to be worthy of that, right? And perhaps only when we understand the depth of that kindness, right, can we appreciate and in turn have a heart after God's heart. Jim?
We are Jonathan.
Yeah, Mephibosheth there, yeah.
Before God,
Mm.
lame,
Yeah.
And God says, adopts us and brings us in. I mean, there's probably not a better story
Mm-hmm.
of God's grace than
Yeah.
what we read right here. And it's easy to read over that and just think it's all just a story about a lame boy, but it's so much
Yeah.
more than that.
Yeah. Anybody else have any other comments or thoughts here? Deb?
Another translation for his daddy is faithful love.
Mm.
The idea of the covenant of promise that he made to Jonathan years ago, it is, in a sense, foreshadowing Christ and God's love and his faithfulness to the covenant.
Mm-hmm.
He promised you something, he absolutely will fulfill it. And
Mm-hmm.
there's no, David made the covenant out of his love for Jonathan. There's nothing that compels him to be obligated to do that.
Yeah.
But he just made the covenant out of his care and his love, which is what God does for us. And then he obviously
Mm-hmm.
exemplified at least that part of Christ, his mercy, as you said, and his grace, but his faithfulness to promises
Mm-hmm.
that he gave.
Faithful love is probably even a better term for Hesed, simply because kindness kind of takes on its own meaning. Faithful love is a little encompasses more broadly that idea, and that faithful love flowing down like a thorn-covered crown, as the song goes, doesn't it? All right, who's our Chris?
Do we have any that need to take the Lord's Supper, or do you have your supplies? Good. Let's pray for the prayer. Father, we thank you for your Son, whose body was broken on the cross as a sacrifice for our sins. And be with those that are taking to remember that sacrifice. And commit the love in their hearts. In Jesus' name we pray. Again, let's pray for the cup. Father, we thank you for Jesus, whose blood washes away our sins. And be with those that are partaking to remember the sacrifice of that shed blood on the cross for them. In Jesus' name we pray. A few short announcements. VBS is in 2 weeks. This year's a one-day event, and they need volunteers. This morning, Caleb had his phone number up on the bulletin board. If you would like to volunteer, just get with him, text him, whatever, tell him, and he'll find something for you to do. This Wednesday evening, we're going to have guest speakers. Leanne and Dale Kastner will be here. Dale will be in the main auditorium. Leanne will be up with the ladies' class upstairs. They're good friends of Berna Dunnigans that are coming to talk about mission work in Malawi, Africa. The prayer requests, we've got Amber Verdier, Debbie Hamilton, and Paul Black. They're all recovering from surgeries. Steve Taylor's test came back cancer-free, but he will have a lymph node removed this week, so keep him in your prayer. And Bruce Beasley, I know it said that he was having issues with AFib and infection, but his kidneys are also not functioning, so they've chartered a flight. They're back in Springfield at Mercy, but he will probably have to start some dialysis soon. So keep him in your prayer. Is there anything else before we dismiss? And if you would stand and join me in prayer. Father, we thank you for this day and the rain and the sunshine that you blessed us with. Be with us as we go out to take what we've heard and apply it to our lives and show kindness to those around us and be the people that you've called us to be. And help us to go out and be good stewards of what we have for you and teach to those that are lost. Be with those that we've mentioned that are sick and recovering from illnesses, that your healing hands can be on them, and they can be restored to health and return return to this number. Be with us this week to keep us from sin and forgive the many sins that we do have. It's in Jesus' name we pray.